If you want to learn how to make a grilled cheese sandwich that looks like this, then this is the video for you. Through my years of internet grilled cheese making, I've learned that grilled cheese sandwiches are actually a very controversial food. Should you use mayo or butter? White bread or sourdough? Should the cheese be medium rare or well done? In this video, I'm going to be testing these debates and cracking the code for a perfect grilled cheese sandwich using the scientific guess and check method. By the end of this video, we are all going to be grilled cheese experts. But before we can make grilled cheese sandwiches, we need to learn how to make toast. I feel a little bit like Mr. Miyagi saying that. I think making toast is the wax on, wax off for grilled cheese sandwiches. To master making toast, we are actually going to be testing our first grilled cheese controversy by comparing butter, mayonnaise, and olive oil as toasting lubricants for bread. And to make this a really scientific test, I'm going to be using each of these on both white bread and sourdough bread. There's a hot debate in the grilled cheese community about whether butter or mayonnaise is the best toasting lubricant for your grilled cheese sandwiches, but as somebody who uses olive oil, I've never been too involved in that argument. Grilled cheese traditionalists will argue that butter is the only option because that's how our grandparents used to do it and that's how we should do it too. The main argument people make for butter is that, well, butter's delicious and it's going to add some amazing flavor to the grilled cheese sandwich. However, there's new age grilled cheese radicalists that are on the side of mayonnaise. Why mayonnaise, you may ask? Well, mayonnaise is mostly oil, so it does make sense in that regard, but the main argument made for mayonnaise is that it allows you to get even coverage of the spread on the bread, which gives you a perfectly even toast. If you ask me, that all makes sense. Butter and mayonnaise both seem like reasonable options to use, but I do use olive oil. I wish I had some really well thought out explanation for why I use olive oil, but I honestly think it's just because for a while I was using a flavored olive oil to toast my sandwiches, and that kind of just transitioned to me using regular olive oil. So I'm actually really interested in this side-by-side comparison to see if I genuinely do prefer olive oil or not. The first thing I noticed is that with all three of the oils, the white bread toasted the fastest. For the butter, it toasted in 3 minutes and 15 seconds, while the mayo and olive oil both took 4 minutes to toast. The sourdough with butter on it took 6 minutes and 55 seconds, it took 5 minutes for the one with mayo, and 7 minutes and 15 seconds for the one with olive oil. So if you're in a hurry, definitely use white bread, not sourdough. As far as evenness of toasting goes, I think the white bread with olive oil is the overall winner, but the rest of these do look pretty good. If I had to pick one that was the worst toasted, it would be the sourdough with olive oil, which is ironically the one that I use. But the most important test is the taste test. The buttered toasts both tasted like butter, which should be pretty obvious, but you do have to keep in mind that since it is a strong buttery flavor, it's going to be a main flavor of your final sandwich. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but for some combinations, you may just not want the sandwich to taste like butter. The mayonnaise toasts both had a slight fishy flavor, which I was kind of confused about where that was coming from, but it was a little unpleasant. And the olive oil toast didn't really have any extra flavors, it pretty much just tasted like toasted bread. The olive oil had no impact on the flavor. In every one of these cases, I noticed that the sourdough was a little bit crispier and the white bread was a little fluffier on the inside. So you can use that information depending on whether you prefer a crunchy grilled cheese or a soft and pillowy one. My overall winner for the white bread is definitely the butter because white bread on its own does not have much flavor, so the butter is a nice added flavor boost. However, my overall winner for the sourdough side is probably the olive oil. If you're using a high quality sourdough, the bread itself is going to have a pretty good flavor that I do want to taste in the final sandwich, which is why I would use olive oil, which does not cover up that flavor. So what I'm going to do now is take the butter and white bread and sourdough and olive oil combinations and put them head to head in a competition of grilled cheese. While I didn't pick the mayonnaise as a winner for toasting, I am a big fan of adding mayonnaise to the inside of the sandwich, so I'm whipping up a quick chipotle mayo using some chipotle hot sauce and mayonnaise. You don't necessarily have to use mayonnaise on the inside of the sandwich, but I would recommend that you use a sauce of some sort because it's a great way to add some more moisture and flavor to the sandwich. Another thing that I always recommend doing is adding a little bit of salt to each of your grilled cheese sandwiches, and when you really think about it, it does make sense because you do season everything else you cook with salt. You can also get really creative with it by adding other spices, and today I'm adding some garlic powder because I think that will go well with the chipotle mayo. The cheese most grilled cheese sandwiches use is American cheese. When I make grilled cheese sandwiches using just white bread, I usually also just use American cheese. I don't add any additional cheeses because American cheese melts very quickly. And as we just learned, white bread toasts faster than sourdough, so you have less time to melt the cheese while you're cooking it. But since sourdough does take a longer time to toast, you have more time to melt the cheese, and you can add some more complex cheeses that have been aged and are harder and take a little bit longer to melt. The white slices of cheese you see me adding to both sandwiches is Munster cheese. It also melts pretty quick and it has an excellent cheese pull when it melts, so I like to add it to all my sandwiches. For the sourdough sandwich, I did also add some sliced cheddar and shredded Parmesan because those are going to help enhance the depth of flavor. Now it's time to toast the sandwiches, and just a reminder, I'm using butter on this white bread sandwich, and I'm toasting in a pan because pans give you the most heat control. Since white bread is a pretty delicate bread, I want to be able to turn the heat up or down if it's toasting too fast or too slow. After just about 7 or 8 minutes, the grilled cheese sandwich will be done, and you can have a beautiful cheese pull just like this. The sandwich has a gentle crunch with a light and fluffy inside, and of course it's very cheesy and very buttery. It's pretty good. For the sourdough sandwich, I decided to toast it in the panini press because sourdough is a very firm bread and it can handle being smushed. The cheese pull wasn't as good as the white bread sandwich, which only used American and Munster cheese, but it was still pretty good. And for the flavor, since I used olive oil instead of butter on this one, I could really taste the cheese and the bread itself. What this experiment showed me is that if you want the classic and familiar grilled cheese sandwich, you should probably use butter and white bread. But if you're going to seek out high quality breads and cheeses, you won't want to mask that with the flavor of butter, so you should probably use something like olive oil to toast your sandwich. Hopefully these tips will help you make a better grilled cheese sandwich, but I want to encourage you to experiment beyond the things that I talked about today. There's an infinite number of grilled cheese combinations that can be made when you start experimenting with things like sauces, spices, and add-ons. By making just a few substitutions, you can create something that is incredibly delicious and so much more advanced than a basic grilled cheese sandwich. It really doesn't have to be complicated either. This is a honey, Gouda, and truffle butter grilled cheese sandwich, and it was fantastic. That's all for today, so remember to like, subscribe, and stay cheesy, my cheddar children.